Hey everyone, welcome back to some start of the week build shenanigans, and on today's content we are doing Blade Vortex as a chieftain. And I know it's like the most unoriginal concept ever, but don't worry, as we are gonna spice things up by playing Cyclone cast while channeling Blade Vortex. Now there's an original concept, right? Anywho, this character is pretty strong, but the playstyle is a bit rough around the edges. We can move around and cast Blade Vortex on the go, but we're still kinda slow and that may throw off some of you. But don't worry, because the single target portion of this build is actually pretty competent, and you're gonna see that from the boss gameplay at the end of the video and throughout the video in the gameplay stuff that I normally put while I explain stuff. So yeah. If you are new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on the channel. Otherwise, a rating and a comment help us defeat the YouTube algorithm. And as it's tradition nowadays in the channel, you can skip to the bosses by following the timestamps on screen right now, or in the description, or in the comments. So with all of that being said, let's spin to win. Okay, so this character is a level 95 chieftain, and I actually do not think that you have to push this high, because the last 4 points are these nodes over here, the staff nodes near the witch starting area, which do help us in the DPS department, but they aren't that mandatory in the long run. So at level 91 that should be more than enough. However, let's actually talk about the skill tree. And for that we are a chieftain that is taking Namaju's Flame Advance for Fist to Fire, Hinekora's Dead Fury for the Fire Lich and covering enemies on Ash, Ramako's Sun's Light for fire penetration, and Tasalio Cleansing Water for the fire resistance. And we mostly want that fire resistance so that we can avoid taking fire resistance on the gear and instead allocate dexterity or chaos resistance on those suffixes. However, we mostly want dexterity so that we do not get any dexterity on the skill tree and use those points somewhere else, since at the end of the day Blade Vortex eats a lot of dexterity. So yeah. As for the rest of the skill tree, it is pretty self-explanatory, since we already converted 50% of our physical damage to fire thanks to the ascendancy. Then we have to take Avatar of Fire to convert the rest into fire. However, that means that we do not deal anything that is not fire, so keep that in mind. We also are gonna take Unwavering Stance over here, since it is on the way towards the general area of the skill tree, and that makes us stun immune. We also want some gem, or rather jewel sockets on the skill tree, especially the ones that are on the way. We're gonna take some staff stuff over here because we are using a staff, and these nodes over here and these nodes over here give us crit chance and crit multi while wielding a staff. We are dealing elemental damage, and Fizz's extra fire is also pretty useful over here. So yeah, besides that, some area stuff, life, spell crit here on the witch starting area, and also the herald stuff because we are using 2 heralds in this character, alongside some fire penetration and more life. So yeah, self-explanatory really. But we're also using a large cluster jewel with 8 passives, which has Essence Rush, Arcane Adept, and Conjured Wall, which is the last node that we are not allocating. And we mostly want Arcane Adept, which is gonna give us Arcane Surge for 4 seconds after channeling for 1 second. And this applies to every single channeled skill, also Cyclone by proxy, which means we're gonna get it pretty often. However, it does not stack continuously, which means every time Arcane Surge is off, we have to stop channeling Cyclone and re-channel it again so that we regain Arcane Surge. And while that may feel a little bit wonky in the beginning, once you get the hang of it, it isn't that bad, and it's mostly used for single target. For the medium cluster jewels, one of which has Evil Eye and Lord of Drought for Curse Effect and Flame Ability Curse Effect because we are using Flame Ability, and the other medium cluster jewel has Endbringer and Empowered Envoy because we are using 2 heralds and they give us a lot of damage. And for the rest of the jewels on the skill tree, we are using a Watcher's Eye with crit multi with precision, which means we need precision, but we only use a level 1 precision for that. We do not need to level it higher. The rest of the jewels are Cobalt jewels with life and either increased crit multi or spell crit multi. And as a little late league pro tip, You can force global physical damage on Cobalt Ewls if they've got an open prefix, because global phys damage is the only thing they can roll as a prefix. And with the Garden you can augment physical modifiers and that way force global phys damage and get more damage. But that's gonna be it for the skill tree, and now we are gonna jump into the gear portion of the video. Okay, so before we actually take a look at the gear, I want you to understand that this character was built with Harvest in mind. aka, I get to play around with Harvest and force certain modifiers to spawn on the gear. So if you're playing beyond Harvest or outside Harvest and you're trying to get something similar to this character, do keep a realistic approach to gearing up your build, because at the end of the day I don't know how difficult or easy is it gonna be to get similar stuff to this character. So with that said, let's begin with the staff, which is an Eclipse staff with cast while channeling and phys damage to spells, and I bench crafted the +2 level of socketed support gems and global crit multi. In general, I would recommend going for a pure Shaper staff with the cast while channeling and hopefully search for physical spell skill gems or general spell skill gems have additional levels, because that is gonna give you a lot more damage than the flat physical damage. And since I couldn't find something like that, this is why I slammed the two staves together, and this is why I had to benchcraft the rest of this stuff. So try to get something as close to this or as the stuff that I mentioned. Moving on to the Astrula Raza, or the Astral Plate with 6 white sockets that I keep using in every single build since the Tectonic Slam character. This Astral Plate has life, increased dexterity, chaos res, frenzy charges on hit, and enemies you kill explode. In your case, I recommend that you slam together a Crusader Plate or body armor with enemies you kill explode alongside a Redeemer body armor with the frenzy charges on hit, and working off whatever rolls after that little experiment. If you want increased dexterity or flat dexterity, you can benchcraft it if you've got an open suffix, but beyond that, getting something as close to mine, especially outside Harvest, is gonna be a little bit expensive or difficult, so keep that in mind. The first ring is a Warlord influenced Vermilion ring that has Phys as extra fire, fire damage per endurance charge, life that I benchcrafted, lightning res, fire damage and flammability on hit. To craft something similar to this guy, I used essences of Hysteria on a Warlord influenced Vermilion ring until I got modifiers that I could remove using remove a non-fire and add a fire modifier with the Garden, and that way I forced the flammability to spawn. However, the fire damage per endurance charge and increased fire damage is completely useless, so if you can avoid getting them, that'd be great. But if you get them, they still kinda work because we've got endurance charges and the fire damage also helps us a little bit. The lightning res was fire resistance originally, but thanks to the Garden I was able to convert it into lightning res, and I was able to benchcraft some life. So try to get something as close to this guy. The other ring is also a Warlord influenced Vermilion ring, which has life, Phys as extra fire, global crit multi, chaos res, benchcrafted increased damage, and a pathetic amount of strength, which is completely useless. To craft a similar ring to this guy, you're gonna spam essences of Hysteria on a Warlord influenced Vermilion ring until you get life and the Phys as extra fire with workable suffixes, and you're gonna remove the suffixes that you can, and you're gonna craft increased crit chance and crit multi if you've killed recently, and then using the Garden you remove a critical modifier and add a critical modifier, and on Warlord influenced rings that is gonna force crit multi. Since I also had an open suffix, I slammed a chaos resistance thanks to augment chaos, and I also had an open prefix which I crafted the increased damage. Again, the strength is completely useless, and if you can avoid getting it, that'd be great. But that is how you get something like this, and it is absolutely recommended to get something like this. Moving on to the helmet. The helmet is both Warlord and Shaper influenced. For the nearby enemies take increased elemental damage, the global crit multi, and it is enchanted with Blade Vortex, have 3% to crit multi for each blade. Now, this is important because you can actually craft this yourself without really investing a lot of currency. And what I mean by that is that you can get a helmet that is uninfluenced, slamming a Warlord Exalt, spamming alterations or using the garden until you get crit multi, and then Awakener slamming that helmet with a Shaper helmet that has nearby enemies take 6% increased elemental damage, and that way you get something like this, and you don't have to, overpay someone else that has something that is arguably worse than what you can craft yourself, especially in Harvest. Now, mine rolled increased area of effect, which is kinda useless, especially since that is a support gem that is also making Wave of Conviction and his spell totem setup a bit more expensive, so if you can avoid getting that modifier, that'd be great. But yeah, I crafted life and I would rather have gotten that life regen out of there using the garden, but I do not have remove life currently, which is why I am leaving it as it is. And I recommend getting something as close to this guy so that you get more damage into this arguably powerful character. So for the boots, we are using two-tone boots with Warlord influence, with dexterity, a lot of resistances, movement speed, physics extra fire, and hopefully yours get more life than mine. And I crafted these guys using the garden by getting a pair of Warlord influenced two-toned boots with the movement speed and the dexterity, and using the garden I was able to force the resistances and then slamming a physical modifier for the physics extra fire, and I got bad life thanks to the garden, and I would have liked to have more life, but I was unable to do so because I don't have remove life or remove another life currently. But hopefully you can roll more than I did. The gloves, I actually traded for them, but they didn't have the spell damage nor the benchcraft. I got a pair of Warlord influenced gloves with life, dexterity and a resistance, then benchcrafted the crit chance and elemental damage, and augmented a caster modifier on the open prefix that I have, and that is how I got these guys over here. And I would recommend doing the exact same thing, because at the end of the day we need a lot of dexterity to get the dexterity covered for Blade Vortex. The belt is a Stygian Vice that was used by my Cyclone champion, which had melee damage during Flask effect as a suffix, and I removed that for the dexterity and intelligence craft, and it has life, increased global fist damage, lightning res and chaos res. So for the belt I recommend that you craft it yourself. You're gonna get an elderly influenced Stygian Vice off trade, and then use the garden to force the modifiers such as the life, the increased life and the global fist damage, and hopefully the resistances as well. And you want an open suffix to craft dexterity, because alongside the Yule, which also has dexterity, life and physics extra fire, that way we can avoid investing into more dexterity on the skill tree, and we can use points somewhere else instead of investing into dexterity over there. So do that. Finally, for the amulet, this absolute unit has Doomcast as an anointment, which gives us spell crit chance and spell crit multi, and it has, dexterity and intelligence as an implicit, physics extra fire, life, spell damage, global crit multi, chaos res, and I crafted the endurance charge. In your case, getting something like this is gonna be pretty fucking expensive, so I recommend that you start off with something that has life and the crit multi alongside a resist or two and an open prefix, so that you can slam a Warlord Exalt and hopefully get physics extra fire, fire penetration, or +1 level of all physical skill gems, and that way you end up with something as close to mine, because otherwise buying it off trade is gonna be pretty fucking expensive. So that's gonna be it for the gear. For flasks we use a diamond flask, a bottle of faith and a wise oak. If you do not want to use the bottle of faith, you have to replace elemental focus on the skill gem setup for conk effect, because you can use a Cinder Swallow instead, and you need to ignite enemies to bask in the bonuses of a Cinder Swallow, and that is gonna be your other alternative. Since we're in the topic of gem setups, and that is the last topic, we want Blade Vortex, Empower level 4, Inspiration, Cyclone, Awakened Control Destruction, and Elemental Focus on our weapon. Okay, so on the helmet we want Wave of Conviction, Inspiration, Spell Totem and Combustion support. And we're mostly using Inspiration because we've got increased area of effect as a support inside of the helmet, which is making Wave of Conviction a little bit more expensive, so keep that in mind. The gloves have increased duration linked to Val Righteous Fire, which is mostly used for single target. On the body armor we've got Herald of Purity, Herald of Flash, Enlighten level 3, level 1 Precision for the crit multi from the Watcher's Eye, and Zealotry. And I also placed a Summon Flame Golem here to keep it relatively cheap thanks to the Enlighten. And finally on the boots we've got a Portal, Enduring Cry and Flame Dash linked to Second Wind to have double Enduring Cry and also have a shorter cooldown over there and also a shorter cooldown on Flame Dash. But that's gonna be it for the character himself. I know that the gear portion already took way longer than anticipated and I need to start cutting down on time with these things because they are taking far too long, so promise that this is the last time we do something this long. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me this time around. I'm gonna leave you with the gameplay if I didn't put the gameplay on top of the commentary because this is already pretty long. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you are new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you are not new around here or you don't want to, a comment and a rating help us greatly to defeat the YouTube algorithm. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope to catch you on the next one. Take care and peace out.
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain? Die.
Beyond, there is only horror. Your lives are meaningless! Obliteration!
Do you yet see the futility of your efforts?